Hi, I'm Cora Villery,
I'm Martha Forqua.
and this is our project, Policies for Poverty.
Quotes to inspire. One of the quotes that we found was "Poverty is a punishment for a crime you did not commit" by Gina Creedon. And one quote that inspired us was the Shepherd Program mission, and is to understand and address the causes and consequences of poverty and inequality in ways that respect the dignity of every person.
So, how should we define and measure poverty today? Poverty should be defined as the lack of access to all the basic necessities of life. We should measure poverty using the basic guidelines of the Supplemental Poverty Measure, or the SPM, along with some of the capabilities approach. But what does this thesis really mean? Let's break it down. First of all, what is access? Not enough money? That's what some people consider it to be. Money can be known as the root of everything. Money is what the OPM and SPM both use to measure poverty. What are the OPM and SPM? We'll get into that later. But what about everything else? What if you had the money to buy some fruit, but you don't have access to a car to drive to the store and get to it? Well, that's what the capabilities approach deals with. So, what is the capabilities approach? This is an approach created by Amartya Sen to approach poverty and well-being from an ethical direction, and it focuses on capabilities and functionings, meaning what an individual is able to do and what an individual has already done. But which capabilities matter?
Education. Education can be measured through tests, through literacy rate, through the mean of education. Education contributes to poverty. In many countries, the higher your education, the higher your chances are for more opportunities, job promotion, and many more. For example, if a company has to choose between two potential employees, they might look at their education and how high their education is to determine the factor and on who they want to employ. So the one with a college degree or PhD or master's is gonna be chosen over the one with just a high school diploma. Another factor to consider is the political approach. Many people have choices in ways that they can decide if they want to or not to practice that choice. One person can have the right to vote, but they can decide to either participate in the governmental elections or they can decide not to. Is their right, and they can choose to do the function or not. Bodily health. Bodily health is for people to have better lives, and this includes their basic necessities such as food, healthcare, and houses. We can measure their life expectancy for an individual life, and children experiencing poverty or going through poverty have higher chances of having nutritional deficits and developmental delays, because if the parents cannot provide them with such nutritional foods for them to eat, this is gonna affect their growth negatively, and is gonna decrease their chances of surviving through childhood to adulthood. With healthcare, if someone does not have good healthcare, this could affect the way they can live a better life, because they don't have the money or the resources to be taken to a hospital to be checked up, to have the medication that they need to survive.
So, after hearing about what the capabilities approach is and a few different ways to measure the capabilities approach, we decided that we will measure individuals' capabilities in only the few areas that we find to be the most important, which were education, political control, and bodily health. We are only using some, but not all of them, because there are infinite number of capabilities, and we can only measure a few of them without expending too many resources on trying to figure out what each individual can or can't do. Now, what are some things that might lead to poverty?
So some factors that affect poverty could be the COVID-19 that came. We can agree that poverty has decreased over the years. When we compare the statistics of 50 years ago, 100 years ago, poverty to today, we will see a definite decrease in poverty. But COVID-19 came in late 2019, early 2020, and this had a toll on the poverty decreasing. Many people lost their jobs. Many people could not afford food because they were out of jobs, and they didn't have any source of income, which affected chances of getting the basic necessities that they needed for them to survive. In poor countries, they did not have governmental benefits because the government could not provide for every citizen. And in this situation, it was hard for the citizens to go through this situation without experiencing poverty, because if they don't have any savings to get them through it, they did not have any source of income, any source of resource to feed them until the crisis was over. One other thing is the societal differences. As seen on the picture on the right, government needs to do more. The picture on the right is a South African picture from the apartheid, and even though it's kind of different from what we're saying, it has a connection to poverty today, because I've seen there was inequality. I've seen the connection is how differences in inequality and how these two societies are separated due to poverty. One has these nice and technological advances and one does not, because there was no equality shown, and people did not have the job opportunities to go to jobs and to have the benefits that they needed to have a better life.
So, back to the thesis, what are the basic necessities that we're talking about? Most people can agree that people in poverty should have access to food, clothing, and shelter. But do people in poverty usually have access to more? Well, this is what Rector's argument is. Rector argues that the average poor family has, as you can see, a TV, video games if they have kids, especially boys, and a car. Now, what we think about Rector's argument is that there are some misinterpretations, and it's only looking at the surface level of amenities and what people have. For example, maybe a family has a car, but they don't have enough money to fill it up with gas and actually drive it. Or, Rector argues that the average family in poverty also has a fridge, but what is in that fridge? We don't know if they have no food at all, or if the food's gone bad, or if there's 40 people trying to eat out of this one fridge. So we are not using Rector's argument in our measurement of poverty because it doesn't look deep enough into what a family really has. It just looks at the surface level amenities. So back to the OPM and SPM. So how do we measure poverty? These are two ways that the government measures poverty, and I'm going to compare them. So the official poverty measure measures poverty by taking a household's gross annual pre-tax income. This means what they make in a year without accounting for the taxes that get taken out. The supplemental poverty measure measures income minus non-discretionary expenses, such as taxes, plus non-cash benefits, so things that the government might give to a family to help them come out of poverty. So obviously, the supplemental poverty measure is a lot more updated and a lot more specific to what a family is actually earning and what a family is actually getting from the government. But what about the threshold? So the official poverty measure takes a threshold at 3 times the cost of a very minimal basket of foods from the 1950s or 60s and adjusts it for inflation each year. And the supplemental poverty measure takes 83% of necessary items, which they say is food, clothing, shelter, and utilities, and multiply it by 1.2 because sometimes things can cost more or less depending on the item. Now, we've decided that the SPM is the overall better way to measure just because it's more updated and new with the times, and it takes into account government benefits and a lot of things that the official poverty measure might not see or take into account. So, in conclusion, poverty should be defined as the lack of access to all the basic necessities of life. We should measure poverty using the basic guidelines of the Supplemental Poverty Measure, or the SPM, along with some of the capabilities approach. After watching our video, we hope that you agree and you can see why this is how we should define and measure poverty.
Thank you.